Welcome everyone, I'm Drew Walker. I host the Midday Show at US 99. Give yourselves a round of applause for some wine and food. This is an exclusive wine pairing and cooking demonstration inside our culinary kitchen. We are live on US 99 Facebook right now. We are live on culinarykitchenchicago.com. You could take photos, you could take videos. If you post it anywhere socially, we ask you to use the hashtag #ChicagoKitchen. And we are very excited tonight because the audience and the folks at Facebook, the smells in this room are amazing already, aren't they? Amazing. So our wine expert from CBS2 Chicago, he is our wine host tonight. Please welcome Ron Breitstein from St. Francis Winery.
Thank you.
Now you notice what Ron did right there. Before he came over and said hello, he picked up the wine. Cheers to you.
Cheers to you.
So tell us what you picked up and tell us a little bit about St. Francis Winery.
Well, St. Francis Winery has been around for the late 1970s in Sonoma. And what I picked up is the 2015 Chardonnay. And one of the things that's really great about St. Francis is all their fruit comes from Sonoma County.
They're very fruit-based, full-bodied wine, and all of the grapes for all the wines come exclusively from Sonoma County?
Right, there's many wineries that are in Sonoma, Napa that have a lot of their grapes come from there, but they get them from other regions. All the grapes from St. Francis are from Sonoma, and that's what makes it really a very, very special place.
That's wonderful. And you chose the Chardonnay for the first pairing?
The Chardonnay for the first pairing. Now this wine is, we'll be pouring this for you very shortly, so. But it's
as he makes you jealous while he's sniffing and
well,
getting
I'll have
the
to
aroma.
get our crew out here to get it poured shortly. But it's you'll notice it's really crisp and clean and easy to drink. A lot of really nice fruit to it, really some wonderful exotic flavors. But one of the things I want to make sure that you try to do tonight is when you get the wine, taste the wine by itself. Don't drink all of it before the food gets out, please. And then once you get the food that the chef's going to prepare, taste the wine again after you have the food. And see how it tastes a little bit different, or it could taste a lot different for the matter that.
And for folks who aren't familiar with wine, maybe this is their first wine and food pairing demonstration ever. What's happening there? Why is that? Why is the taste of the wine changing after you bring the food into it?
Well, once you bring the food into it, the different flavors that are in the food start to change, and then that changes what between the acid and the fruit and the oak and all the different things in the wine react differently to the different flavors that are in your mouth.
Okay. So we have the wine. Should we bring out the chef?
Well, we can't have a food demo without the chef, can we?
Without the food, right?
Because I can't do that, and
so
I know
we
you
have
cook well, but
I know I don't cook well at all. We have St. Francis Winery, and we have our friends from the Windsor, Chicago downtown. Please welcome Chef Brian Allen and our sous chef as well. Come on out, guys. So, Chef Brian, you had the opportunity to learn which wines we were going to offer up through St. Francis Winery. And for the Chardonnay, what did you choose to pair it with tonight?
Chardonnay, I chose the bucatini pasta. It's going to be a bucatini pasta with crispy pancetta, a little bit of leeks in there. We've got a little bit of lemon, fresh shaved pecorino. We've got also some chives in there, or some scallions, I apologize. Bucatini pasta is an Italian-style pasta, similar to spaghetti, but it's got like a hollow through the noodle that kind of helps it hold on to some of those nice, rich sauces and everything. The reason I chose the Chardonnay is because the Chardonnay pairs very well with this dish. The dish is very rich. Chardonnays typically can be a little bit richer of a white, but also it's got that nice acidity. It's going to cut through the pecorino cheese, the pancetta, and kind of dilute some of the salinity. Right.
And when we were talking right before we started, you said this is your most exciting dish for folks to try because of one reason. What was that reason?
It's the simplest dish that we're going to execute today, honestly, but so that's why it's my favorite.
But to define that a little bit more, simplest meaning like I can go home and try to do this too.
Absolutely, that's why I chose this one. This is going to be one that everyone can execute at home very simply in about 10 minutes, probably 15 minutes of prep time. So that's also why it's my favorite, because you're going to have no problems going home, grabbing the ingredients, and literally whipping this up for a nice quick dinner for you, your wife, your husband, or a couple friends for a dinner party. And it's not too labor intensive either.
So walk us through it. We're excited to watch you work.
Sure. First, we're going to start with the olive oil. All right, we'll get our pan a little bit hot. For this one, you're gonna go about medium heat, okay? Get the olive oil nice and warm. The pancetta is like an Italian style bacon, right? So it's gonna have a little bit more seasonings in there. Bacon's typically cured and smoked. And for pancetta, they like to use a little bit more seasonings and spices in their cure. So you're gonna get a little bit more complexity from a pancetta than you would from a bacon, right? And it's it's saltier as well. It's gonna be very, very heavy on the salt. So that's one thing that you're gonna want to think about when you're making your chicken stock that you're gonna use in this dish, right? You don't wanna add any salt to it or use anything that's been previously seasoned or anything like that, because it's gonna be a reduction. And the salinity from the pancetta is gonna season the entire dish. I'm actually not gonna add any more salt to this dish other than what's in the pancetta. So for that, you're gonna wanna render off your pancetta ahead of time, just because you could do it in your pan, but it takes a while to crisp up. So if time is an issue, go ahead and render that off when you're prepping all of your items ahead of time, so that you don't run into people getting mad at you because the dish is taking forever. All right, so we got our oil nice and hot here. Actually may have gone in with a little bit too much, so let me get rid of it a little bit.
Is there something as too much oil?
For this dish there is, because it's going to be a reduction of the chicken stock, and so the fat and the chicken stock that are in the dish are going to come together in a nice, like, nagi sauce. If the ratio is not perfect, your sauce will break, okay? So that's very important.
And all the wines we're tasting today, you can find at your local Julasco. You can find out more about them online at stfranciswinery.com and thewindsorchicago.com as well for the food that we're going to be tasting today.
Correct.
And also everybody has tasting notes and information about the wines
so you can
in
take
front
notes.
of them.
Perfect.
So your pancetta is going to be crispy from rendering it off ahead of time. But I just like to get it in the hot oil for a couple reasons. You're going to distribute some more of that pancetta flavor throughout the oil, which is going to incorporate into the rest of the dish, but also just to give it that extra crispiness right there at the end, so it holds up to the sauce and everything. So while your pancetta is getting crispy, you're going to start noticing it change a little bit of color. On the edges, it's going to get a little bit darker. That's going to let you know that it's crispy. And I'll go in with my leeks, all right? And again, you know, for the foodies and the cooks out there, your initial instinct is going to be to grab some more salt, you know, with each ingredient. For this one, don't do that, because your end product will be salty. All your seasoning is going to be in your pancetta. Just toss that around, get those leeks nice and covered with the fat. And leek is a type of onion. It's got a very, very buttery characteristic to it. So once you kind of render it or cook it down in the fat a little bit, it's going to get real nice and rich and creamy. And that's kind of another reason why I chose this dish. This dish is kind of decadent in a way that it's very rich and it's very salty, but it goes very well with really any wine, honestly. But that's perfect with the Chardonnay.
We like that, though.
Right. All right. I'm going to go in with my pasta next, just to kind of heat the pasta through a little bit, pick up some of those flavors from the pancetta and the leek. And I'm going to go right into my pot with the chicken stock. Okay? Just want to make sure we get all of that out of there. We worked hard for that nice stock, so we don't want to waste any. Lots of chickens died for that. And I don't know if you've got an overhead view here of what you can see, but you're going to kind of see in the bottom of your pot a nice little bit of liquid there, right? Your bucatini, when you cook off the bucatini ahead of time, you want to cook it very al dente, right? It should still be very toothy in the middle. You're going to finish cooking it in this sauce. So along with the rich chicken stock and the leeks, the starchiness from the pasta is going to help thicken up the sauce, okay? So once you reduce that down, you're going to kind of see the pasta will be cooked perfectly, and then everything's going to kind of hold on and cling to the pasta just the way you want it. One thing that I do like to do for this particular dish too is take some of my pecorino cheese and just kind of shave it right in there. That as well is going to add another level of complexity to the dish.
Is there anyone in the room that likes cheese at all? Cheese, right? Yeah, come on. That was the weakest applause for cheese we've ever heard.
Come on, come on.
Yeah. Cheese and pasta and amazing St. Francis wine. Are you kidding me?
Right, exactly.
And all the smells too.
Right.
No pressure, no pressure.
Ah, you're good.
Right?
So the pecorino cheese is a semi-firm, well, it's a firm sheep's milk cheese, right? It's similar to Parmesan, not aged quite as long, so it's going to be a little bit softer. But you're going to get that difference of flavor from the sheep's milk compared to your Parmesan, which is cow's milk, right? If you have friends that already off the bat know they don't like sheep's milk or goat's milk or something like that, Parmesan as a substitute is perfectly fine for this. All right, we're getting close here. The noodles are getting nice and coated. Getting a little saucy at the bottom. I've got my scallions here, just cut about an inch, inch and a quarter, just a little bit, probably about, I'd say a quarter cup. I'm gonna add those at the very end. It's gonna add a little nice bright vibrance to the dish. It's gonna be a fresh green. And it's also gonna, it's gonna go well with the dish just because it's gonna have the leeks already in there. So that onion flavor is already gonna be in the dish, right? So just right at the end, just to kind of wilt it, keep it nice and vibrant and green. What we know about green vegetables, as soon as they hit heat, right, they turn really, really bright green before they turn dull. And that's it. Heat off. Go ahead and, grab my tool here. We'll just go right into this dish here. I had my pasta in already. I like to use tongs just because we're chefy and we like to kind of give you a nice little nest of the pasta.
That is beautiful.
Yep. And you'll see, like, the noodles are nice and coated. You're gonna have a little bit of extra sauce down at the bottom. Everybody loves that. Nobody's gonna complain about that. And then make sure you get all of those nice scallions out of there. Nice and vibrantly green. Okay. We're going to just literally squeeze a couple drops of lemon over the top. It's gonna help just cut through the richness, right? We got our pecorino that we used in the dish itself, already shaved. Just gonna take a little bit of that. I like to shave it, but then I also kind of like to break it up on top. Gives it this very rustic kind of look to it. You know, don't go too heavy too. A lot of people think, oh, pasta dish, cheese, and they just go crazy with the cheese on top. But you want it to eat well, you know what I mean? You want the flavors to be balanced and everything like that. And then just finish it off with a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. And then some more of the lemon zest. Right? So the lemon zest and the lemon juice, both part of the lemon, obviously, but they have different different flavors, right? The juice is going to be highly acidic. You're going to get, that's what, when you're thinking lemon, you're thinking of the juice, right? Well, the lemon zest offers that subtlety of the lemon as well, without the acidity, okay? So it's great as a garnish on top, all right? So that's the finished dish there. Claudio's finished.
Looks good. This is Instagrammable now.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
Do you, as a chef, and you as a wine expert, when you get done with a great dish or a great bottle of wine or a pour, do you, like the rest of us, be like, this is Instagrammable? I want to take a photo for my friends? Be honest. Everyone is already...
I'm my own worst critic. So at the end of everything I do, I always think, hey, that could be better, which drastically reduces the amount of Instagramming that I do. But
so we're getting all the dishes ready to pass out for everyone to taste, and then when they pair that with the Chardonnay,
we can talk a little more about the Chardonnay while Claudio's finishing up here.
Okay.
So if everybody has the Chardonnay, I don't know if you've tried it yet, but pick it up and swirl it around a little bit, get some of the aromas to jump out of the glass. There's nothing wrong with putting your nose in the glass. Sometimes we go to restaurants and you order a glass of Chardonnay and it's ice cold and they serve it to here, so you put your nose in it and then you're wet.
Just give me 20 seconds.
So is it wrong if the wine is all the way up to the top of the glass?
Well, it's hard to smell it, and if it's too cold, you can't taste the fruit in it usually. So that's why when we do demonstrations and things like that, in tastings, we don't pour a lot because we want you to be able to really taste it. And this isn't ice cold. This allows you to actually taste the fruit that's in the wine.
Is there a proper temperature for white wines that we should be looking at when we're buying a bottle of this at Julasco and coming home with it?
Well, the really good rule of thumb to follow is that if you have a bottle of white wine in the refrigerator, take it out about 20 minutes before you're going to serve it.
Okay.
Because that way it gets some of that heavy chill off of it and allows the fruit and the aromas to really, jump out of the glass and give you that enjoyment.
And is that taking it out of the fridge and opening the bottle, or just letting it be a closed bottle of wine on the counter?
Oh, it doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
It's just the 20 minutes just to let it warm up, because if your refrigerator is 36, 37 degrees, it's just too cold. You really want it to be in the high 40s, low 50s is kind of like the ideal
And that's
temperature.
for any wine, or just particularly the white wines and the Chardonnays?
Well, for white wines, I mean, while we're talking about it, for red wines, if you have your wine in a wine cellar, you want to take it out 20 minutes ahead of time, because 57, 58 degrees is too cold to drink most red wine, but room temperature is probably a little too warm.
Gotcha.
So if you have a bottle of red wine and you keep your place at 72, 73, and you can even put it in the fridge for 15 or 20 minutes just to break it off, because if red wine is too warm, then you taste a lot of the alcohol and you don't taste the fruit. So that's one of the things. But I taste a lot of really interesting flavors in here, but I'm curious to see what some of you taste. So anybody willing to tell me what they taste in it? Buttery, a little buttery, yeah, because it's through a little bit of malolactic fermentation, yeah. Apple, I got that apple.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I got some pear in it myself. Did anybody get a little bit of pear?
Sure. On the end there.
One thing I like about it, the acid's really balanced in here, so it doesn't, jump out at you too much. It doesn't attack your tongue with a lot of dancing on it. It just kind of melds nicely, and the finish of this wine is really just nice and long, and it lingers there without overdoing anything. So now that the food's coming out, taste it, and then taste the wine again, and see what you think.
I think you're going to notice that this wine really will cut through the richness right there in the beginning at the front of the tongue. So.
Is this a recipe that, oh, thank you. Is this a recipe that you developed, or that you put your own personal flavor on?
I would love to take credit for this recipe, but no, this is actually one that we did for, so the Windsor participated in the James Beard Eats Week this year. So this particular dish came off of the James Beard website, but this is one that we have made some tweaks to kind of make it our own, and have run a couple times at the restaurant. Yeah. There were a couple things. I made a substitution for, I believe they used shallots in the original recipe. I used leeks in this one. The pecorino is a variation as well.
That's a totally different taste on the wine after
Totally
your first
different.
bite. Is everyone noticing that after your first bite of the pasta, and then you take another sip?
I mean, with the pancetta, it's really amazing, because a lot of times you would think that it would just overpower it, but it doesn't. What it does for me is it brought out some different kind of fruit
changes the
flavors
wine
to it.
for you,
Changes almost the whole body of the wine in my mouth. Any of you get that same kind of feeling?
What's everybody think of the food?
Oh.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Anybody like the wine? Yeah. Okay, good.
So while people are eating, and you're going to start to set up for our
Second demo, yep.
and our second wine, I have a question for you, Ron.
Okay.
Because you're a wine expert. You've written books about pairing amazing wines in California with gourmet food. What was the last wine that really surprised you, that jumped out at you? And you said, wow, I did not expect this. Something where we could go and find it and say, Ron told us about it. This is pretty cool.
Wow. I probably had...
Even within the St. Francis line. Because we were talking before we started about the complexity of even having different types of wines. With the grapes all being from Sonoma County, it's a lot more rich.
It's interesting, because I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in the wine business and drank a ton of California Cabernet, and didn't learn to appreciate Sonoma Cabernets until I got a little bit, more years into the business. But St. Francis makes a reserve Cabernet that is really rich and intense and gives me a lot of that feeling.
Can you explain what the word reserve means for a bottle of wine?
Okay, so reserve would mean there's no legal definition of reserve. Usually
Okay.
it means the best grapes
Okay.
or the best wine that they have in the winery.
The more expensive bottle.
Right,
compared to,
they make that the more expensive bottle.
'Cause
The grapes
it's-
might all be the same price, but a lot of times they're not.
Yes.
Vineyards get rated by different grades on what quality of fruit they produce. So they could have different levels of vineyards that they're pulling these grapes off, or different blocks in the vineyard, different rows of the vines. But these would be the best Cabernet grapes that came off of those vineyards, and they bring a different richness and intensity. And where the Sonoma County line of the wines we're trying today are the real drinkable wines that just give you that everyday,
Yep.
delicious. You open up it and you're getting better than an inexpensive bottle of wine. You're just getting a really great bottle of wine for the money. The Reserve is another couple notches up, and it just gives you more intensity, more fruit, more character, more flavor, more layers,
I love
more
it.
things to, to smell in it. That's kind of what it is. And then when I had that wine, I was like, wow, this is kind of delivering for me like I used to like all those other wines, and I still do,
Okay.
but it delivered it for me.
I love it. So the second wine we're moving on to is kind of along that vein. We're moving from white wine to red wine. We're
Yes.
moving to the St. Francis Merlot. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, so the St. Francis Merlot that's in this glass here. Chef, would you like some?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I was waiting for that.
So when St. Francis started by Tom Martin back in the 1970s, it was known for making great Merlot. And people thought only good Merlot could be produced in Napa Valley, but Sonoma had really great vineyards with Merlot growing on it, and Tom Martin was darn sure that he was going to get this out. So for years, he made a Merlot that was really big and rich and heavy and almost tannic at some points. And a lot of times Merlot is a grape that's used as a blending wine into Cabernets and wines of Bordeaux to soften it up a little bit, because usually it's a little bit softer.
Okay.
So you're getting the wine poured now for you. So one of the things I love about Merlot is the berry fruit that you smell in it.
Yes.
And the one thing that I love about these St. Francis wines is the drinkability of the wines. Is when you smell it, you can just smell all the cherries and the berries in this wine, and it's just got this softness in the nose. Sometimes you smell a wine, you smell the alcohol, and it goes,
Yes.
on you. And I'm sure that's happened to all of us. But this wine, if you smell it,
It's a very enjoyable smell.
right. And then when you taste this wine, how many of you saw the movie Sideways?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so the funny thing in that movie was, Paul Giamatti's running around saying, I'm not going to drink any Merlot, only going to drink Pinot Noir. But the wine he had at the end of the bottle he saved for the end of the movie, the Chateau Cheval Blanc, is 50% Cabernet Franc and 50% Merlot. So somebody missed something in the script there or something with that. But it's great wine, Cheval Blanc, by the way. But Merlot kind of took a hit after that movie because everybody wanted to drink Pinot Noir. But Merlot's a great wine to drink.
I think it's great that you point that out, because for us, just regular people watching that movie, we were like, what's wrong with Merlot? I love Merlot, and now I can't drink it. I can't take it to my party because someone would be like, oh, you're drinking Merlot?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what was happening for many years, and it's the last couple of years it's starting to make a comeback.
It has.
It's not out of vogue anymore.
Right.
And the thing that's great about it, especially if you haven't consumed a lot of red wine in your day or found wines that you like, it's easy to drink in comparison to a lot of other red wines because it's got a softness to it.
So we've had a sip of this, and now, Chef Brian, you've decided to pair this with a warm butternut squash and kale.
Yes, absolutely. Let me pull my demo out here. I got wrapped up in the wine conversation.
It happens.
There's nothing wrong with that
From time to
on
time.
either end here.
Yeah, this one I paired with a warm butternut squash salad with a cumin yogurt dressing. Okay. Now you think kale, you don't immediately think Merlot, right? But the butternut squash in this recipe is roasted with some warm spices, particularly allspice, cinnamon, and nutmeg, which actually really go well with the flavor profile of the Merlot. All right, so that's going to be a subtlety that's going to actually make the pairing go together pretty good. Just going to grab a mixing bowl here real quick. All right, so I got my butternut squash here. And as you guys know about the butternut squash, it's a nice large squash. It usually comes in like a bell shape, kind of. For these nice cuts of the butternut squash, you're going to use the neck, right? I would save the rest where the seeds and everything are at. This is what we did at the restaurant. We saved the rest of those pieces, cut them down, made a butternut squash soup out of them, right? Using some of the warm spices in that soup as well, just kind of as a garnish on top. So these warm spices go really well with any kind of squash, honestly. I like to go in with the butternut squash because the butternut squash has like a little bit of, it's got a sweetness to it that a lot of squashes don't have. So you just go your nice cubes of butternut squash right in your mixing bowl. The marinade, which is 1 tablespoon each of your warm spices, so your cinnamon, your nutmeg, and your allspice. 3 tablespoons of olive oil, right? Gonna kind of stir that up a little bit, kind of suspend all those spices in the oil for a nice marinade. Let's get a little bit of a drizzle on there.
And I might have missed it when you were talking about it. Was there a specific reason that you only used the neck?
Just because you're gonna get a nicer cube out of it.
Okay.
So the bell of the squash is going to have your seeds and everything in there. So once you cut that open and you scoop out the seeds, you've got real thin pieces of the squash.
Yes.
It just isn't as presentable.
My wife loves to do that for like a butternut squash soup for Bears Sunday, and I don't know anything about it, so that's why.
Those pieces
are
the best.
Babe, I'm gonna be like, hey babe, I learned that the neck is the better part of the butternut squash to use, so you should try that. And then she'll look at me.
It's all good for the soup, but the neck can be used for things like this, and then that other part of it can be, because it doesn't look as well.
Yes.
Can be used for things like soups and sauces and
Gotcha.
things like that. So we got our nice warm spice marinade on there. That's all it is. You got your salt in there as well. It's 1 tablespoon of salt along with the warm spices, just on a small sheet tray. Okay. You're gonna roll that into a 425-degree oven for about 10 minutes. Okay. Once you do that, this is what you're going to end up with, right? Very nice.
Through the magic of live Facebook. Voila!
Nice roasted butternut squash, okay? You're gonna want to have it slightly toothy in the middle, not too soft.
Wow.
So right at about 10 minutes in that 425-degree oven is perfect, okay? The other part of that demo that I'm gonna do is the yogurt cumin dressing, all right? I'm actually just gonna use the same bowl, rinse it out here. Hope that's not too loud for the microphone.
And everyone has this type of kitchen to cook with at home, right? Lots of room, 12 burners.
Wine is already poured when you come in.
Right, wine's already poured. The meal's already prepared, and then you're doing it a second time just for fun.
Right. Okay. Literally 1 cup of yogurt. This is very, very simple dressing, okay? 1 cup of Greek-style yogurt. For this one, we use Chobani just because it's a nice, thick, rich yogurt. Right? Lemon juice. Okay, it's gonna be 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. 1 tablespoon olive oil. 1 tablespoon of cumin, ground. And 1 teaspoon of salt. And you're just going to incorporate all of that. Now the dressing itself is going to seem a little bit bright and a little bit salty, right? But once you get it coated on that kale and the butternut squash and mix in with those warm spices, everything is going to even out.
It mixed together very quickly.
Yeah, comes together quick. I would, a whisk probably helps it come together a little quicker. And that's it. So you'll see Claudio's over here. He's dishing everything up. We just took, for this particular execution, we took the kale, just tossed it in a little bit of oil, a little bit of salt, and just kind of put it in the oven, 350 degrees for like 5-6 minutes. You want this to be slightly wilted kale, but you don't want it to be soft. Once it starts to go soft, it starts to expel its liquid. and then the dressing won't coat it or come together the way you want to. And at that point, you've got sautéed greens as opposed to just a nice warm green, right? We're just taking the edge of it off a little bit. Got some shaved shallots in there for a little bit more savoriness, and then topped this one with a seed mix, which is just toasted sesame seeds, white sesame seeds, toasted pumpkin seeds, and toasted sunflower kernels. All right, that's going to add a nice nuttiness to it. Goes very well with the warm spices and the butternut squash, but also for a little bit of texture.
So it's a bed of kale,
Yep,
and then you're adding the squash to it now.
Yeah, so
and then just topping it with the seed mix.
Right, the kale's just dressed in the dressing right there on the plate. Kind of put the nice warm squash on a couple pieces on top, maybe a little bit around. The heat from the squash is going to help kind of bring everything down in the kale as well. We're going to scoop a little bit more dressing over the top just so we can make sure everybody gets that flavor. And then he's already applied the seed mix, but again, just for a little bit of nuttiness of the flavor and texture.
Okay. And Ron, for the Merlot with this, once folks start to taste it together, how do you anticipate the wine tasting for them to change?
Well, I think once you taste the cumin in the yogurt and the viscosity that the squash has, I think that'll actually go really nice, because most of the time I wouldn't think of serving a red wine with any kind of greens along these lines, but because of the ingredients that Brian put in the dish, I think it's going to be really interesting and really surprising. And a lot of people just like to drink red wine. That's all they want to drink.
I was going to say, like, with the squash soup, or if you do like that type of base soup or thickness, I love pairing red wine with that because it brings the flavors out. But exactly what you said, if I was just having a green salad, I would never think to put red wine with that.
Sure.
And most of the time, red wine doesn't go with green salad. The bitterness of the greens usually will conflict with the tannins in the red wine, and they just don't make a really nice pair. But once, and Brian will tell you this, and most chefs will tell you, once, it's all about the sauces when you're doing wine and food pairing, is that the sauce can totally change everything and make things completely different on how everything tastes.
Okay. A reminder,
that's perfect. That's good.
All these wines are available at your local neighborhood Jewel Osco. You can find out more online at stfranciswinery.com. And the Chardonnay that we tasted first is under $15, and the red wines that we're tasting, both this Merlot and also the Zin, which is a very special Zinfandel, which we'll talk about in a minute, these are also under $20. So very affordable, great flavor, and can be paired with a lot of different type of foods that we're excited about. There's not a lot of hum in the room right now because people are starting to eat.
Yes.
Which is perfect.
That's good.
That's good.
Well,
I know, I'm excited to taste the squash, whether it's, do you prefer a more tender squash, more hardened? You were talking a little bit about that, where you didn't want to cook it too long. You said 10 minutes only?
Right, so you know, squash can get very, very soft, which is how you would prepare it if you were going to use it in a sauce or a soup or something like that. For this one, I kind of wanted to maintain some of the integrity of the squash itself. Keep it a little bit toothy, but you're still going to get the nice texture from it being soft on the outside, and then just having some of those warm spices kind of actually permeate the squash itself.
This is a perfect pairing of wine and food. Am I right? Is this an amazing taste flavor going on in your mouth right now with the wine and the food?
But one thing that, if you're having difficulty pairing wines with a dish, right? One thing, we can talk about flavor profiles of the wine and the food and how well they go together and all that. One thing you're going to remember is that if your dish has a good amount of salt in it, it probably will pair pretty well with the wine. Just salinity mellows out those wines really, really nice. So I think with the warm spices and just the amount of salt that we have in this dish, it's actually gone pretty perfect with the Merlot, I think.
And it's really interesting because when I had it with the squash, I don't know how anybody else felt, but the wine became unbelievably robust.
Yes.
Just jumped out at me, more tannins to it that you weren't even remotely evident when I first tried it. Then I just had it with just the kale. And the robustness went away, but there were still really great flavors that came out of it that I wasn't sure what to expect.
Sure.
But if you try it separately, see what it does. It's almost like you're... Exactly.
I was going to say, Is anyone in the audience tasting something different or something you were surprised about? Putting the flavors together? See, everyone's quiet again. We're all eating. That's good.
The sweetness. Somebody said they got a little sweetness there.
Sweetness from the wine or sweetness from the squash? Yeah. Sure. Perfect.
That's one of the things that I always find fun with doing wine and food pairing. Sometimes you discover something you never would ever think you'd discover just by taking a little bit of a chance.
Sure. Well, that's what I think. I think we're always so restricted by those traditional guidelines of which wines to pair with what foods and all those things. But like I said, you know, you mess around with your seasonings and your spices and that kind of thing, you know, it really opens up the doors. It opens up the spectrum.
I mean, there was a cookbook that came out around the time mine did in the mid-1990s called Red Wine with Fish. And at that time, I mean, this is, you know,
like
20-something years ago, and over 20 years ago, you can't do that. But as I just mentioned before, it's all about the sauce and the preparation. And you can do almost any kind of combination, because this is a big winner to me.
Sure.
I even like the kale. I even like the kale.
Dude.
You don't like kale?
You give me the hard time. He's like, I don't like kale. I'm going to skip that.
I do now.
Yeah, loving great pairing together. See? Open to trying new things, learning one new thing every day, right? That might have been our one thing. So this is a great pairing. While our audience is eating and pairing them together, why don't we start talking about our Zinfandel, which is extra special.
Of course it's extra special here for you.
Why is it extra special?
It's extra special. This wine from St. Francis is Old Vines Zinfandel.
Okay, what does Old Vines Zinfandel mean?
So Old Vines, although there's no, as I said earlier, there's no rule. Generally, most of the time, the vines that the grapes grow are 50-year-old vines or older.
Okay.
Now for St. Francis, these vines that the grapes this comes from are between 55 and 100 years old, the vines.
And what does the age of the vine have to do with the grape and the taste?
Well, if you ever see a young grapevine, it's very thin. It's almost like if you planted a little tree out in front of your house and it's got a real thin, you know, shaft to it or whatever.
Okay.
And then each year as the grape grows and gets older and matures, it gets bigger and wider. And then as it gets older, it gets really gnarly and it starts twisting and it gets all these bumps on it and all sorts of things. So the older it gets, the more mature it is. When you have a young vine, you get younger fruit.
Okay.
As the vine gets older, you get older fruit, more mature fruit. Not necessarily older fruit, but it's more mature. What's in how the grape grows and all the molecular parts of it changes, and you're getting a grape that you can do different things with.
Okay.
And you have to make it differently. You can't make it the same way.
And along that veins, I'm not sure if anyone else knows, but I'm not familiar. How often for St. Francis and their Sonoma County with their grapes, how often are you harvesting grapes? Is it every year? Is it 2 years? Because you talk about the maturation of grapes and the vines. How does that
So when you plant a grape, it usually takes about 3 years till it bears any fruit that you can use to make wine.
Okay.
But then you really are picking, in most years, you're picking fruit every single year. You know, from not only from a agricultural standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. You know, it's a business, and you have the land and you have the grapes. You got to put the grapes, either sell them or make the wine out of it to sustain it and everything. But unless there is a catastrophic weather condition, which, you know, we always pray that there isn't, and we've been pretty lucky most of the, you know, the last 30, 40 years we haven't had too much issues in California. But that's how you would every year you're picking the fruit.
And you're finding that as you're picking the grapes every year and the vines are getting older, you said the grapes are growing more robust, more flavorful.
They're going to be more intense.
Okay.
They're going to be more tannins in them as they're picked, and so it's a little more of a challenge for the winemaker. Katie Madigan, who's the winemaker who makes the Old Vines Zinfandel for St. Francis, she has to really, you know, put all her winemaking skill and knowledge into this to get this wine to get as beautiful and as drinkable as it is.
So this is an Old Vines Zinfandel with the vines of the grapes being 50 years or older. Is everyone, so we're pouring it now.
I like that one.
Again, have a chance to smell it.
You know, you should smell.
Swirl.
You know, swirl it. You know, get some of the aromas out. This wine should have hints of a little bit of spice, maybe maybe a little bit of black pepper.
Black
To
pepper.
it.
Very much so, the black pepper. Which
I'd be
is,
curious-
again, one of those things we love about the deep reds and Chicago winters and the foods you're putting together. And forgive me, chef, but I'd be like, you know, let's do a chili crock pot and get a really, really good
grew up in
black
Kansas.
pepper. Okay, good. I didn't know if you're not supposed to pair that or not, but we'll do like a chili crock pot with like corn and cornbread, and then be like, you know, what's the greatest tasting red we can find?
this ranks
And
right
this
up
is
there.
it. This is it.
That one's good.
Any of
I
you
like that.
taste anything or smell anything different in it than we mentioned?
Spices.
Maybe
You
a
get
little
bit of
some
wood.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get some of the oak.
tobacco,
Yeah.
a little bit maybe. A little of that tobacco flavor.
Then in the mouth, this one obviously very different in the mouth than the Merlot was by itself. It's got much more intensity. The alcohol level in this is much higher, and there's probably 1.5% to 2% higher, which will make it taste maybe a little bit hotter or warmer in your mouth, and give that, you know, almost like when I have it go down, it's almost like my body kind of just got a little warmer
Yes.
and everything from it. Then you get that same kind of sensation.
So with the Old Vines Zinfandel from St. Francis Winery, again online, stfranciswinery.com, chef decided to pair it with a beef bourguignon and persillade, and those are words that I just learned how to pronounce. So I had to memorize it. I think I still butchered it, but can you tell us?
No, it's fine.
Did I do okay?
Yeah, you
sort
did
of.
all right.
Oh, I did all right. All right.
You did great.
So now that we have this
For a guy that
warm,
does words
amazing
for a
wine, how did you decide this meal to put together with it?
So obviously with the Zinfandel being a nice, big, rich wine, right? These beef bourguignon classically is going to be paired with like a Burgundian wine, okay? But I wanted to pick something that was nice and big and bold that would go with this. I chose this dish for the season, and just this is one of my favorite dishes of all time to make and to eat. This is one of the dishes I made at one of my original restaurants that I was working at out of culinary school, which is a French restaurant in Denver, Colorado called Z Cuisine. And I really learned how to make, you know, the classics there. And that was kind of the foundation of my culinary education. So I kind of wanted to pay homage to that a little bit, and I thought it would go well with the wine. So that's why I'm here doing this one. I've used just a Dutch oven. Everybody's got a Le Creuset at home, I'm sure, or Dutch oven or something like that. We'll get it on medium heat.
Does anyone not know what a Dutch oven or Le Creuset is? You say it like everyone uses it. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
It's
Is it
this.
it's this.
This thing.
Is it a bowl that just allows better heat and cooking?
It's just, right, they're usually enamel coated. A lot of them are cast iron, but it's just something that you can literally get everything going on.
Perfect.
And literally roll it right into the oven.
Awesome.
Okay. I got a nice piece of chuck for this. So this is all fancy names and everything aside. This is a beef stew. Okay. Everybody's made beef stew. So nice piece of chuck, right? You've got some very nice. I don't know if we can get a camera shot there, but nice marbleization in here. And what that's going to do is that's going to help break down the meat and help add the richness to the dish that you're looking for.
Yeah. Perfect.
See that marbling right there? Nice chunks of fat in there. All right. And the way that I've got it served is a nice big chunk of meat. The way I like to do it at home, or if I'm executing in a restaurant, I like to keep it nice in portion size in the chunks of meat that you're going to use, right? But at home, a lot of people, again, beef stew, you can cut it down to size. For this particular demo, that's what we're going to do, right? So we're going to take our chuck, and we're just going to cut it down into like stew-size squares, all right? I've got a seasoned flour here. All right, the richness for the gravy is going to come a lot from the body of the stock that you're going to use. We've got a nice chicken stock with a nice viscosity and some body there, but also a lot of it's going to come from this almost roux that you're going to make with the seasoned flour coating that you're going to do on this beef, right? So I've got, grab my olive oil here. Got my pan getting hot. You're going to want to use a good amount of olive oil for this. For a couple reasons. It's going to help keep from the coating actually burning. The level of heat that you're using is also going to do that, but you want that added fat in there for the richness in the sauce as well. All right, so toss your meat in your seasoned flour. Shake off the excess, okay? Oil should be getting nice and hot here.
Medium heat?
Yeah, medium heat. I would get the olive oil in probably a minute or two before you're going to actually add the meat. That way the oil's nice and hot, right?
Sizzle.
See, you get that sizzle going.
Yep.
And you're going to build that crust on the outside. A lot of people don't realize that when you're making these stews or you're making beef like this, a lot of the flavor that's going to come from the end product is in the caramelization that you get from the sear. It's a Maillard reaction is what we call it. Right, so I don't know if you guys can hear it sizzling in there. They probably get some nice shots, aerial shots. But you're just going to basically get that sear.
You need like an oven microphone to come down right there.
This is going to be the longest demo I did today. But I kind of really want you guys to see this one from start to finish, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to get a nice sear on each side of the beef. I'm going to kick up the heat for demo purposes here just so we can get this going a little bit. But you guys will see the nice color and caramelization that we're going to get from this very first side that we're searing off. After that, you're going to want to have the rest of everything prepped, right? Typical mirepoix going into this stew, right? So I've got my carrots, right? Nice oblique cut, okay? I chose the oblique cut because it exposes more of the center of the carrot, which is where that nice sweetness for the carrot is. Got pearl onions, all right, just cleaned up, cores taken off and peeled from the outsides peeled off to expose that nice sweet onion in the middle, and just celery stalks, right, cut into thirds, right, no big deal. The dish that you're going to receive, that Claudio's plating up here, is a little bit different than what I'm actually executing. This is more of a restaurant style, right? So I've got thumbelina carrots in there. I've actually used celery root, okay, as one of the roasted root vegetables that I used. And that's going to carry over the flavor from the celery, okay? And then we do have some of the pearl onions in there. And I just did a celeriac mashed potato with it. So just take your favorite mashed potato recipe, all right? And then you can buy celery root at usually a specialty market or a store, but like Whole Foods has it, Pete's Fresh Market I know have it. Then you're just going to take the celeriac, cut it down into probably 2-inch pieces, and about halfway through your cooking process, your potatoes, throw the celeriac in there. Cook it all together and just process it the way that you would normally make it. It just adds a nice level of savoriness to the mashed potato that you're looking for.
I lost my train of thought when you said mashed potato. So, because that was not on the prep of, hey, we're doing mashed potatoes.
It wasn't on there, it wasn't.
That's a surprise from the chef, right? We like that.
There you go.
Mashed potato, and that's the thing. So Claudio, our sous chef Claudio, was working with the mashed potato when you guys were coming in and starting to do your sampling. I was like, I think that looks like mashed potato, but it's not on the list, so maybe it's a really cool new vegetable we've never tried before.
Well, I wanted to, the star of this dish, obviously, no doubt, is the bourguignon, right? That's what I'm wanting people to be able to go home and make.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, you can make that on its own or whatever, but you're going to always see this paired with some sort of mash of some type. I did a celeriac mash. One that's very popular with this is like a rutabaga mash, or some sort of radish mash into it. Again, it's just fancy French stuff, but also it just adds a level of complexity and savoriness to it that you may not necessarily know where it's coming from, but it's definitely there. And I don't know if we can get another shot of this beef, but I've turned it and I'm searing off the other sides now. But you can see we've got a nice caramelization there on that top side.
If we were just going to have a bowl of mashed potatoes, Ron, because again, my train of thought going back to mashed potatoes, I don't get them a lot. Is there a particular wine that you would love to put with that you think would... What? It's an honest question. Is there a particular wine with mashed potatoes, or is it more just for the complexity of red as a whole?
I think for me, a bold red wine, a Cabernet Sauvignon, a Malbec would be nice.
The Malbec, I love the Malbec.
Something along those lines.
Okay.
But even I'm sure that this Old Vines Zinfandel, once we get to it, is going to be right on with it.
This is amazing watching him do what this is. But when we're at home, we're like, let's just make some mashed potatoes, and then put some wine with it, and maybe put a fire on because it's getting down to the 40s now at night. So.
Right. And everybody kind of goes with, they've got their recipes they've been executing forever. They've got their mashed potato recipe. It's the same one they make all the time. Switch it up a little bit. Think outside the box. Throw some of these root vegetables in there. play around with it. Throw some extra herbs in there, or throw some herbs in the water you're cooking your potatoes in. Throw some rosemary or something in there, and let it kind of cook into the potato, or it's a little bit of garlic in there. And you're gonna really see how the flavor profile changes, okay? All right, so we got our nice sear on our beef, the Zinfandel.
Oh, good.
Okay, right in here with the dish, all right? You're gonna deglaze the pot. It's gonna reduce that nice red wine. It's gonna get kind of syrupy.
So looking on the overhead, it is sizzling. You can see the boiling. Yeah, it's a very amazing.
Absolutely. Then after that, you're just throwing everything else in, okay? Carrots go in, pearl onions go in, celery goes in. I've got a few sprigs here of rosemary that I'm gonna throw in there as well. A few sprigs of thyme, just gonna throw that in there. And then my nice rich chicken stock.
And this is also the first recipe that we've done inside the culinarykitchenchicago.com that is actually cooking with the wine in the demonstration. I love that.
Great. And that's why I picked this one. For whatever reason, yes, I understand his logic behind the cab maybe being better.
Oh, I don't know.
But when I tasted this one, especially the difference with the
the Old
syrup,
Vines.
You just asked me what I would drink with
Yeah.
Exactly. That's kind of what.
Yes.
I think this is going to be great
It's
with
going to be phenomenal. What a
And
difference.
then I've just got some garlic here, whole heads of garlic, just smashed. Right, you're just going to expose the center of it, get that flavor out, throw it right in there. Okay. 350 degrees, an hour. Okay, and you're gonna have a perfect beef stew, right? Sometimes, depending on the amount of jus and everything that you go in with, it might be a little bit liquidy. The viscosity of your sauce might not be there. No problem. Pull everything out, reduce your sauce down a little bit, put everything on the plate, and just kind of pour your sauce over the top, right? So just play around with your culinary expertise. I know you guys are all chefs.
Yep. We were all taking notes we've memorized everything you were saying,
Exactly.
word by word.
And that's all she wrote.
I was more surprised that I haven't seen, round of applause, start passing it out. I was more surprised, especially with you, Ron, where this is the first demonstration where we've actually seen the wine going into the meal, and it immediately brought everything that you were doing in there into this giant mixing bowl, and then when you added the chicken stock and you could smell the wine in the food.
You can smell it in the air still.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but are you using the wine to cook in the actual dish because it adds even more texture rather than just kind of pairing it when you're drinking? And
I mean, I don't know that it adds texture, but it sure adds flavor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of times it really helps meld the flavors of everything together because there's even though the alcohol cook off from it that's in the wine, it's all the flavors that are in there, and it kind of just between everything that he put into the dish, it should meld right in, flow right into the flavors of the wine.
yeah, it really exploded when you did that. That was great.
So Claudio's passing everything out now. And then that persillade is right on top.
Thank you.
Okay, so persillade is a super, super old school classic French garnish. It's literally pasted garlic and salt and parsley, okay? But what that does is you throw that onto really hot stewed meats, things like lamb shanks or the bourguignon or anything like that. And the heat from it is gonna instantly kind of cook off the garlic and become aromatic. So as soon as you get it, you're smelling that garlic, right? And then you're tasting it and you're getting that fresh parsley. The salt itself is gonna actually help season the dish too. Yeah.
Well, now you got to taste. Now that you took a bite, Drew, now you got to taste the wine.
I did the
with this.
potatoes first.
Yeah.
I did a potato.
I did
I know,
too.
right?
Mashed potato guy.
I have no filter. I'm sorry. I did the potatoes with the carrots first, and then did a taste, and I felt like the wine jumped out at my tongue. Like the flavor, it was like a sizzle to it.
It was almost like an explosion.
Yes.
Fireworks almost in your mouth with wine for me.
Right.
But with the beef right there, and then to the sip of wine now, it feels much more smooth than when we first tasted it without the food, right?
Well, you're getting that because the wine is in the food.
Okay.
Right?
Yes,
That's
there's
what's
no
making
doubt.
everything.
So it's blending
mellow out.
together rather than having that
Exactly.
together. Do you guys agree? Amazing wine, amazing food together.
Right.
And yet one thing that's important is that a lot of times people talk about cooking wine and you don't want to use good wine to cook with. Well, you can use good wine to cook with because if you use good wine to cook with, it's going to make your dish even better.
Absolutely. Plus, you should use any kind of wine that you want to drink, right? So as far as cooking wines, like, you know, people are like, oh, I'm going out to buy my cooking wine. Your cooking wine should be like that bottle of Merlot you didn't finish 2 days ago. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now it's been open for a couple days, and it's not going to be, yes, you'll get the buzz from it, but it's, the flavor's not going to be, you know, what it was when you first popped the bottle or when you decanted it, right? So set it aside. Use it for your cooking wine. Use it in your next dish, right? And then you've got an okay, decent wine in your dish, something that you would drink, right? Just like he said.
Yeah.
And you're not using like Carlo Rossi. You know what I mean? You'd never drink that. So
we started out with the Chardonnay, and then we had the Merlot, and then this is the special 50-year Old Vines Zinfandel. Everyone's kind of eating. We're getting close to the end. Does anyone have any questions that they've been dying to ask Ron or Brian? Wine, food pairings, textures, tasting bottles, anything is up for grabs. We have a microphone, yes.
Hi. On the last dish, I noticed you used a chicken stock for a beef dish.
Sure.
And traditionally, I always use beef stock with beef, chicken with chicken. So can you tell me a little bit about that pairing?
For this one, it was mostly just about having enough of it to execute the dish, right? So when you're, you know, you're always using chickens, you're always having extra chicken bones. Every restaurant's making chicken stocks, right? Which is, you know, when you're at home, yes, you're right, you're making beef bourguignon, so you buy your beef stock or whatever. But for 95% of the other dishes that you're making, you're using chicken stock, I guarantee it, right? Because that's just what you got. So that is why I chose it. But also, I think you're going to get a little bit more body from the chicken stock. The chicken stock, you're going to get a lot more bones. You get some of the skin goes in there. You get some of that collagen, and just the viscosity, the body of it is better. When you do a beef stock, especially in a restaurant environment, you're buying in 20 pounds of bones, right? You're roasting off all the bones, and then you're adding it to probably 16 gallons of liquid that you're trying to pull all of that marrow and all of that body out of those bones, right? And then you're reducing it way down to about 5% to get that viscosity that you want. You don't have to do that nearly as much with the chicken stock. So that's why I chose that one.
Yes, another question?
Yeah, Ron, I got a question for you.
Sure.
With the fires out in Sonoma, how does St. Francis, how do they deal?
Well, so far everything's been okay from all the reports that we've received from there. Thank goodness. You know, a lot of the neighbors have not been as lucky, but where they're located, they've been lucky so far. And from what I understand, most of the, not all, but most of the grapes have been brought in already. And the thick-skinned grapes don't usually suffer as much from the potential issues with smoke as the thinner skinned grapes. So usually the thick-skinned grapes are still on the vines at this time of the year. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything still goes okay. Thank you.
Yes. Any more questions? Everyone's eating again like, I don't have any questions, Drew.
Don't be shy.
I'm eating this amazing mashed potatoes and beef. Yes?
On the garlic.
Oh, hold on, discussion. We'll get your microphone for you. There you go.
Is it better to smash the garlic for flavor or chop the garlic for flavor?
So that is going to all depend on what dish you're making and what the execution of that dish is, right? So this goes back to culinary training from school, but I'll give you a little bit of insight on this one. So when you're making stocks, right, you go from veg stock to fish stock to your roasted chicken stocks and your beef stocks, right? Your vegetable stocks are going to be the smallest amount of time, okay? You're going to want to have your beef stocks and your chicken stocks on for longer to pull everything out of those bones, okay? So I chose to just smash the garlic because this is a stewed meat, like it is a beef stew. So it's going to go in the oven for about an hour and a half, okay? So I don't want to, I want to pull the flavor out of the garlic, but also kind of want to have like nice chunks of garlic in there when you're eating the stew. If you chop it down or if you mince it, it's going to cook very, very quickly. And I kind of want it to cook along with the rest of the mirepoix, so the carrots and the celery, so everything is like perfectly cooked and all the flavors are perfectly melded together when the dish is ready.
All right, last question in the back. Thank you.
Hey, what did you put in that yogurt dressing again? Was cumin?
Aha! I'll give you the recipe right now because I just made it 2 days ago.
Yeah, the yogurt
It's
dressing.
still fresh in my mind, right? So I did 1 cup of the Greek yogurt. I'm going to use a whole fat Greek yogurt, nice and rich. 1 tablespoon of cumin, ground cumin. Everybody's got that at home somewhere, even if it's 5 years old. 1 teaspoon of salt, and then 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. That's it.
And the nice part is that because we are live on Facebook and at Culinary Chicago, Culinary Kitchen, Chicago.com with the hashtag Chicago Kitchen, when you go home and you go to Julasco to search out for these St. Francis wines, you're like, what was that exact, how did he do that? You're able to go back online because it's going to be posted online. So can we give a large round of applause for our 3 amazing wines and for Ron, our expert at St. Francis Winery. Also, Chef Claudio, thank you so much. And Chef Brian from the Windsor Chicago downtown.
Thank you.
Again, online at stfranciswinery.com and thewindsorchicago.com. You can find all these amazing wines at your local Julasco. For everyone at US 99, I'm Drew Walker. Eat up, drink up, and we're glad you were watching. Hope you get home safe. Thanks so much.